The story of the Russian mega-tank convoy ambushed in Ukraine is not just another battlefield update. It is a dramatic turning point that highlights the brutal realities of modern warfare. What was initially seen as an unstoppable armored thrust by Moscow quickly transformed into a nightmare as Ukrainian forces unleashed a meticulously planned hidden ambush that left the Russian formation in flames. This devastating attack demonstrates how strategy, preparation, and agility can turn the tide even against overwhelming firepower. The convoy, a show of force. The convoy itself was enormous, stretching for kilometers across open terrain and narrow rural roads. It was designed not only to punch through Ukrainian defensive lines, but also to intimidate. Its sheer size and firepower were meant to send a message that Russia could dominate through armored might. Dozens of heavy tanks rolled alongside armored personnel carriers, artillery systems, missile launchers, and support trucks. Fuel carriers and logistical vehicles formed the lifeline of the column, ensuring that its advance would not stall. To many onlookers, it looked like an unstoppable wall of steel rolling toward Ukraine's heartland. Russian commanders believed that momentum and firepower alone would shatter resistance. Their doctrine was built on shock and awe, overwhelming the enemy with sheer mass. Yet this belief masked a fatal weakness: predictability. The longer and larger the convoy grew, the more vulnerable it became to ambushes, blockades, and precision strikes. What Russia thought of as a strength, scale, was, in reality, a liability. Ukrainian preparation, shaping the battlefield. Ukrainian commanders were not caught off guard. Through a sophisticated network of surveillance drones, intercepted communications, and intelligence gathered by local resistance fighters, they tracked the convoy's movements with precision. Every shift in position, every pause for refueling, every movement toward choke points was noted. Instead of meeting the convoy head-on, Ukraine prepared the battlefield in silence. Engineers planted explosive charges near bridges, crossroads, and narrow bends. Special forces scouted firing positions along forest edges, ridgelines, and abandoned villages. Artillery units were placed within range, but hidden under camouflage. Drones hovered high above, invisible to the naked eye, feeding real-time data to command posts. The Ukrainian plan was clear: isolate, trap, and annihilate. The convoy would be drawn into a kill zone where maneuver was impossible and escape routes could be sealed. What Russia assumed would be a straightforward armored march had been turned into a carefully laid death trap. The ambush unleashed. When the moment came, the battlefield erupted. The first Ukrainian strikes targeted the convoy's lead tanks and the rearmost supply trucks, instantly sealing the column's fate. Without escape routes, the Russian vehicles were trapped in a deadly corridor. Artillery fire rained down with terrifying accuracy, guided by drones that painted targets in real time. Fuel trucks, the soft underbelly of the convoy, were struck next. They exploded in massive fireballs, sending shockwaves through the entire column. The sky filled with black smoke as secondary explosions ignited ammunition inside Russian tanks. Soldiers scrambled for cover, only to find themselves under relentless sniper fire and drone-dropped munitions. Panic spread like wildfire. Russian crews tried to maneuver their vehicles, but burning wrecks blocked the roads. Some tanks reversed frantically, colliding with others and creating bottlenecks. Others attempted to push through the inferno, only to be destroyed by precision anti-tank missiles. Every movement played into Ukraine's hands. Within minutes, what had once been a display of armored dominance had collapsed into chaos. The battlefield was filled with the sound of exploding shells, burning steel, and the cries of soldiers caught in the trap. Ukrainian infantry units advanced carefully, finishing off stragglers with ruthless efficiency. The aftermath: a graveyard of steel. By the time the guns fell silent, the Russian mega convoy had been erased. Satellite images captured the devastation. Blackened hulks stretched across roads and fields, craters gouged into the earth, and smoke rising from smoldering wreckage. Survivors described terror and confusion, communications severed, officers overwhelmed, and morale shattered. Analysts quickly declared the ambush one of the most significant blows to Russia's ground forces since the war began. Not only had Moscow lost dozens of armored vehicles, but it had also suffered a psychological defeat. The pride of Russia's armored divisions had been turned into ruins in mere hours. Symbol of Ukrainian resilience. For Ukraine, the ambush was not merely a battlefield maneuver, it was a powerful symbol of national resilience and ingenuity. Against a force that appeared unstoppable, an armored juggernaut designed to intimidate and dominate, Ukrainian defenders once again proved that adaptation, precision, and creativity could dismantle even the most imposing of threats. Though outnumbered and outgunned, they turned weakness into strength, transforming the terrain itself into a weapon. The success of the operation reverberated far beyond the battlefield. For soldiers on the front lines, it served as proof that victory was achievable despite the odds. For civilians enduring the hardships of war, it became a beacon of hope. Families, watching the news and seeing images of the destroyed Russian convoy, felt reassured that their defenders were capable not only of resisting, but of winning. Internationally, the footage carried immense symbolic weight. It shattered the illusion of Russia's so-called invincible war machine and demonstrated that determination and modern strategy could bring even the most formidable armored columns to ruin. For NATO and Western observers, the ambush was not just inspiring, it was instructive. It revealed how technology, ingenuity, and flexible tactics could blunt traditional armored thrusts, shifting the balance of power in ways that older military doctrines had failed to anticipate. In a single night of fire and steel, Ukraine had shown the world that wars of the 21st century would not be won by numbers alone, but by those who adapt and innovate fastest. Lessons for modern warfare. The obliteration of the Russian mega-tank convoy immediately drew the attention of military analysts around the world. Experts pored over satellite imagery, drone footage, and battlefield reports, extracting lessons that would shape doctrines for years to come. Several truths emerged from the smoldering wreckage. Overconfidence is deadly. Russia assumed that sheer armored might would guarantee success. That arrogance blinded commanders to the vulnerabilities of their own formation and left them exposed to disaster. Mobility beats mass. The massive convoy, stretching for kilometers, moved predictably along narrow roads. Its size, which was meant to intimidate, became its greatest weakness, turning the column into an easy target for precision strikes. Technology changes everything. Drones circling high above, real-time intelligence relayed to command posts, and precision-guided munitions allowed Ukraine's smaller, more agile force to systematically dismantle a larger one. Adaptability is survival. Ukraine's defenders were not locked into rigid plans. They adjusted constantly, integrating engineers, artillery, drones, and infantry into a seamless trap that caught the Russians unprepared. This ambush will be remembered as a textbook case of asymmetric warfare. In the decades to come, military academies worldwide will study how a force smaller in size but superior in adaptability and information dominance could annihilate a supposedly unstoppable armored spearhead. The bigger picture. Beyond the tactical brilliance, the ambush carried weighty strategic and geopolitical implications. For Russia, the destruction of the convoy was not only a military defeat, but also a humiliation that eroded confidence in its armored doctrine. The loss of so many vehicles and soldiers in such a short span of time dealt a blow to Moscow's credibility, both internally, among its own ranks, and externally, before the eyes of the world. For Ukraine, however, the victory was transformative. It reaffirmed that innovation and courage could counter brute force. It boosted morale at home and reassured allies abroad that military support was not in vain. Every wrecked Russian tank on that road was a message. Ukraine could not only resist, but prevail. Globally, the ambush reminded military planners that the age of massive, lumbering armored offensives is fading. The doctrine of massing steel in overwhelming columns once the hallmark of 20th century warfare, has grown dangerously obsolete. In its place rises a new era, where precision, speed, and intelligence networks decide the outcome. This Ukrainian ambush symbolized that shift, where smaller, smarter, faster beats larger, slower, and outdated. A changing era of war. The destruction of the convoy was more than a tactical triumph. It marked a broader transformation in how wars are fought and won. No longer can a nation rely on sheer firepower or raw numbers to secure victory. Drones, cyber warfare, precision weapons, and adaptive battlefield command structures now dictate success. Ukraine's defenders, with limited resources, embodied this shift. By leveraging intelligence, technology, and timing, they dismantled a force many believed could not be stopped. The message to the world was clear. Even the largest of armies can crumble if they underestimate their enemy, cling to outdated doctrines, or ignore the importance of innovation. What happened on that battlefield in Ukraine was not an isolated event. It was a harbinger of how wars in the 21st century will unfold. Conclusion. In the end, the obliteration of Russia's mega-tank convoy was far more than a battlefield update. It was a story of adaptation, resilience, and the collapse of arrogance in the face of ingenuity. What began as a show of power, a steel wall rolling across Ukraine's roads, ended in chaos, flames, and defeat. A force that had been designed to overwhelm collapsed under the weight of its own hubris, undone by the courage and precision of those it sought to crush. For Ukraine, the victory became a symbol of resistance and survival. For Russia, it was a painful lesson in the dangers of overconfidence. For the world, it was a reminder that war has changed forever. The side that adapts, innovates, and refuses to surrender will always hold the advantage, no matter the size of the opposition. This is Delta History.